to the Storm Tracker podcast.
Welcome back, family, to the Storm Tracker podcast. Marcus Benjamin here, represented for CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals.com network. Make sure you subscribe to CanesCounty.com for free. Use the promo code Miami30. Also subscribe to this YouTube channel, live from Canes County. And big news coming out of Coral Gables yesterday. Miami lands the number one recruit, Jackson Cantwell. Huge offensive lineman, huge pickup for Miami. And to discuss it all with me, I've got Alex Donno, host of the Locked On Canes podcast, to really break down this big pickup for Miami. Alex, when you heard the news, man, what was your first reaction?
There was a lot of shock throughout the day, and I went through different stages of denial, I think, throughout Tuesday, when he ended up making his choice for Miami, because I definitely, and may have been the same for you and a lot of the people watching this, but I woke up on Tuesday morning, decision day, thinking, okay, what time is he going to choose Georgia? For all the momentum, it's been on 3:45. Am I going to watch it, or am I just going to find something else to do and not put myself through the pain? And, I know that some of the big time national recruiting reporters have been throwing some stuff out there, earlier in the week, like, hey, don't sleep on Miami here. And I was kind of feeling like, okay, they're trying to drive up the engagement, a little clickbait, because, what I had heard coming out of the Miami side was a lot of pessimism, Monday and then early Tuesday. So I thought, all right, where are these guys getting their info from? And then lo and behold, early afternoon, Marcus, we start to see legitimate Miami smoke and legitimate Miami optimism. So, by the time we were actually watching the Cantwell announcement, and I love it how like every administrator at his school spoke before he came up, just to build up the suspense, right? Like, let's hear from the superintendent and the principal and the coaches and the guidance counselor. And then finally, Jackson Cantwell. Like, I think by that time, I had an idea that, hey, I think Miami's probably going to be the pick here. But you still, when it comes to the top recruit in the class, you don't know until he actually puts the hat on. And I respect Cantwell. Didn't go through any hat fakes or anything. He was very professional and to the point. He made it clear and concise. He was choosing Miami. And I'm still a little bit in disbelief here a day later that it actually happened, because this is so big for Mario Cristobal, and this is so big for the program to get this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a tremendous talent, plays with a lot of nastiness, and moves well for his size. I mean, used to be a tight end, also has that Olympian DNA in his blood, where he uses it to be a shot put thrower. So I think this guy is an Alex Mirabal, Mario Cristobal type of guy. A guy who really is going to come in and give you maximum effort every time, because that's what you see when you watch his tape. It's like, it's just nothing but maximum effort. But I'm like you, when I saw the announcement, I mean, I kind of had some, I had some intel right before it happened. Of course, if you're a subscriber to CanesCounty.com and you were looking on the message board moments before, then you already knew that I had some kind of intel on what was going to happen. But it still kind of hit different when it actually did happen, when he actually did choose the hat. And to me, it told me, okay, well, Miami can get anybody. Miami can really get anybody that they really, really want and like. And you can't count Mario Cristobal and this staff out of any recruitment race, because, especially when it comes to offensive line, because you got guys like Mirabal and Cristobal who have that resume of putting guys in the league. They have openly taken credit of developing Penei Sewell, who signed the biggest deal for an offensive lineman in the NFL last year. And then here at Miami, you've got players like, Matt Lee, who've gone on to the league. You've got players like Jalen Rivers who have gone on to the league. Francis Mauigoa is likely going to be a first rounder. So to me, it told me that Miami can get pretty much anybody that they want, especially when it comes to the offensive line. Now, NIL, yes, I'm sure it did play a part here because you had Drew Rosenhaus, who's one of the top, agents in the country representing Cantwell. So I think that definitely played a part here. So when it comes to NIL, Miami doesn't have any boundaries either, it seems. It seems that they can entice players with not only development, but also, maximizing their potential when it comes to NIL as well. So the other thing that it kind of hit me with his commitment was the offensive line will never be an issue anymore at Miami. Like this is getting close to where you could say this is offensive line you. Don't you think, Donald?
100%. And this is a big part of Jackson Cantwell's decision process was also an opportunity, a clear path to the field his first year. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. Like I'm not, because, somebody, I made a similar comment on Locked On Canes that somebody took the wrong way. I'm not saying Mario Cristobal told Jackson Cantwell, hey, I'm promising you a starting job. That's not what I'm saying. Like every player is promised the opportunity to compete, and that's it. But in Jackson Cantwell's case, he's not dumb. He's actually very bright. He realizes, hey, there's an opportunity at Miami, because you mentioned CeCe Mauigoa when you were talking about offensive linemen that Miami has developed, more than likely to be a first-round pick next year in 11 months. And, he's probably going to leave early for the draft because he is earning that with the way he's playing on the field. So you can assume he's going to be off to the NFL. And, even on the other side, Markel Bell, probably same thing, is going to be off to the National Football League next year. So you're talking about both offensive tackle jobs open. And yeah, I know Jackson Cantwell is only going to be a true freshman, but it's also hard to imagine anybody beating him out for both of those spots, right? So he understands there is a path to get on the field early at Miami. And yeah, they have recruited very well on the offensive line. And it's a mix of, they've landed some, blue chippers, a few cycles ago. Of course, CeCe was a 5-star. Samson Okunlola was a 5-star. Hopefully we see him continue to develop because he's not had like the same, good fortune that CeCe has had. He's nursed a lot of injuries and had some competitions his first couple of years. So hopefully Samson can also rise to the occasion. So Miami's had the mix of blue chippers and also developmental guys that they're able to, bring to the next level. You look at the way a guy like Matthew McCoy has developed during his time at the U, and Ryan Rodriguez, what he's done, under this staff, and, Jalen Rivers, who was just drafted, was really developed very well at Miami. So yeah, it is offensive line you, and that shouldn't be that surprising when you have a Mario Cristobal coach team, because not only is he a relentless recruiter at all positions, offensive line is his sweet spot. It's his baby. And yeah, I want to go back quickly to something you were saying about the money. And yeah, of course, like we already know. And of course, anybody who's on social media, you hear about, oh, Miami's spending. And yeah, Miami's in a really good NIL situation. Oregon, Ohio State, really good NIL situation. So is Georgia. Although I know Georgia, their claim to fame is, hey, we don't overpay for anybody. Guys come here for the Georgia discount and all that. But Jackson Cantwell, wherever he decided to go, was going to be a millionaire. Wherever he decided to go, okay? And making that decision to Miami. And I'm bringing this up because Jackson brought it up yesterday in one of his post-commitment interviews, because he sees what people write about him. He sees what the narratives are. And he was, I think, taken aback, as was I, about a story that came out on On3 late last week that was basically framing it like, hey, with Miami, it's all about the money. With Georgia, it's all about everything else. And, you know, Jackson was taken aback by the idea that people think that this was just a money decision. Like, of course, money was part of it. Of course. Like, we're not naive. That's just the game these days. But, I mean, are you also not going to give credit to, because, again, when you talk about how Miami is probably the most offensive line-centric program in the country, Alex Mirabal is one of the best O-line coaches in America. And then you also have Mario Cristobal as essentially an extra offensive line coach and the head coach on this football team. Miami also has a beautiful campus, academics, which my understanding, Cantwell has talked about this. I think he really is also impressed by, you know, the field of study that Miami can offer him here. Coral Gables, like there were so many different factors. And also people like to paint everything Miami is all about the money. Mario Cristobal was one of the best recruiters in the country before NIL even existed. So let's not pretend that this guy all of a sudden, hey, Cristobal could never recruit, and now he's got all this Canes connection money. I mean, yeah, does that help? Sure. But Mario Cristobal has always been a great recruiter. He and Mirabal developed a great relationship with Jackson Cantwell. And all of these things, playing opportunity, development, campus, academics, NIL. I'm sure there's probably a dozen other factors that I haven't even thought of that all played a part in Jackson Cantwell picking Miami. Money was part of it, but there's no way it was the only thing.
Definitely wasn't the only thing, but I think obviously it was part of the selling point. And I think one of the selling points that Miami will have for the future, which is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, is that, hey, you know, like I said, Francis Mauigoa likely going to be a first-round pick. So you always have that as a selling point for future recruits, you know, just like with quarterback. You know, I think part of the reason why Carson Beck has came to Miami is because he saw the success of Cam Ward. And I think it's going to be just a snowball effect from now on. I think the next 5-star for 2027 and 2028 will look back and say, well, Francis Mauigoa made it in the first round. And, you know, the last two cycles have been Miami really just, you know, producing player after player in the NFL draft. So I think those are always going to be selling points for Miami. I think Miami will always have the selling point of quarterback right now. And I think that's why you're able to get like a Luke Nickel and a Darion Coleman and whoever the future quarterback is going to be. I think these type of wins in recruitment are not just great today or yesterday when it happened. It's really great for the future because these are always going to be selling points for the staff. They're going to be like, okay, well, hey, we're tight end you. Look how many tight ends we put in the league. Hey, we just had the number one pick in the draft with Cam Ward. The offense was the number one offense from last season. And then now, you know, I'm sure with Jackson Cantwell, one of the selling points was, hey, Penei Sewell was the highest paid offensive lineman, you know, last year. And you know, we're continuing to develop guys, and it could be multiple players from that offensive line drafted in the 2026 draft. And so you have the selling point as yeah, we can bring in a 5-star guy like Mauigoa and develop into a first rounder, or we can bring in I believe Inez Cooper might have been a 2-star or a 3-star fringe type of player.
Yeah.
And he likely, I think, will be drafted in 2026 as well. So you have the aspect of, hey, we can develop top guys and we can take guys that were under the radar and develop them as well. So I think this is just I think people understand, okay, we got a 5-star offensive lineman, not the sexiest position, obviously. You know, for a casual fan, might be like, okay, well, he's an offensive lineman. He doesn't really score touchdowns, although he has scored touchdowns in high school. We might see that too. Who knows? Who knows? Shannon Dawson may add a wrinkle to have Cantwell score a touchdown. May have that for Noah as well. Who knows?
Well, and I think offensive line is it's a unique position. I mean, you could say the same thing about quarterback, which everyone knows is like the most important position in football. But when you have a good offensive line, the domino effect, it helps everybody on offense, right? Whereas if you have like a great receiver, but your offensive line stinks, or even a great quarterback and you can't block for that quarterback, you're not going to go anywhere. But if you have a great offensive line, it makes everybody's job easier because everyone
Sure.
on your offense can benefit from your quarterback having more time to throw. Everyone benefits from your, running back having 3 or 4 free yards because the blocking is so great. So, I mean, players understand that when you have a great offensive line, and it's actually really smart the way Cristobal likes to build his programs from the inside out that way, build his rosters that way, because you have a great offensive line. It's going to have ripple effects towards the rest of your offense that most other positions don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, offensively, you have a strong offensive line. Iron sharpens iron, right? You'll
Yeah.
essentially have a strong defensive line as well. So, and if you have a strong offensive line, that means you can get the running game going. You can protect the quarterback. It's really building from the inside out, and I love that approach from Mario Cristobal as well. Miami's on the cusp of being elite, I think, just because they're able to get top level transfers, as we saw in the spring window and the winter window. They're able to land at least at the bare minimum a top 15 class every year. Sometimes they can get up into the top 5. With Cantwell now, it seems like Miami could possibly get a top 5 class again, as 2 years ago. And there are plenty of offensive line targets to really kind of build out this offensive line. I think they're already pretty solid right now with the commits that they do have. But there's still some offensive line guys out there that they could also add. Right now, they've got Joel Irving, who's I think has plenty of potential. JJ Sparks and Ben Congdon are really nice pieces to the offensive line. But there's some other big time guys out there, Donald. You got Lamar Brown, big time player out of Georgia. You got Cannon Pickett, obviously family ties to the school. He's still out there. Ganaive Carr from IMG Academy that has very high interest in Miami, as well as Brett Colajay still out there as well. And then you've got the local guy, Ryan Merritt. I think this guy is a must get. I think you got to get him into the class as well. What are your thoughts on really kind of filling out this offensive line around Cantwell?
Yeah, and there's even I can think of at least one more name, maybe 2 more. 4-star Johnny Jones out
Yeah.
of the Tampa area, I think is another one Miami's been working on. And I know you were throwing out the names of uncommitted guys, but I don't necessarily think Miami has completely given up on Kenai Pepe from IMG. It's an uphill, like you'd be swimming upstream with that one because he's verbally committed to USC. He's got family ties. His brother plays for them, and I think he's got family members that are on the staff there. So I'm not saying it would be easy, but I don't think Miami's going to give up, and maybe they could really sell him on the idea of he and Jackson Cantwell being like bookend tackles, like the starting left and right tackles for the future. So I don't think that one's completely out of the picture yet. A couple of the names you mentioned, I feel really good about Cannon Pickett. I don't necessarily think his announcement is imminent because he still has some visits to take. But you mentioned the family ties, and it's not just the family ties. We've had Cannon's father, Booker Sr., on Locked On Canes before, and he revealed to us that Cannon grew up hardcore Miami Hurricanes fan, and even Booker Jr., who plays for Miami, was not as enthusiastic growing up about Miami. He ended up being a Cane, whereas Cannon is probably worn Miami pajamas to bed for his entire life. So there's, that's not always the deciding factor in someone's recruitment, but that is out there for him. Ryan Moret out of South Ridge, center, who I love. And same thing with both Moret, who is uncommitted still, and Ben Congdon, who is committed to Miami. I love the fact that both of them are high caliber high school wrestlers. Moret just won a state championship a couple months back. Because to me, there's so much crossover, wrestling to offensive line. These guys have an edge and leverage and toughness that a lot of other offensive linemen don't have. So I hope Moret hops on board. And, you mentioned Miami's already got, I think now, 4 offensive linemen committed, which like a lot of years you would consider that to be probably a full offensive line class. But a couple thoughts on that. I think Cristobal really, like we've noticed, it's been cyclical with Miami, right? Where 2023 was a big offensive line year. Then they went for a big defensive end year, defensive line year in general. Then they went for like a big defensive secondary year. And I think it's kind of cycling back now to being a big offensive line year, because Miami's probably going to lose a bunch of guys to, losing eligibility and losing guys to the draft a year from now. So I think this is the year where they really want to restock. And also back to the point of, I think Jackson Cantwell can be the ultimate domino here, and not just on the offensive line. I think there are other players who play even different positions who may want to kind of join what Miami's building down here, but great players want to play with great players. Right. And I remember speaking with, one of, I was trying to get some inside info from him, but he wouldn't bite. But one of the offensive linemen who's currently committed to Miami, him telling me like how excited he would be to play with Jackson Cantwell if Cantwell were to choose Miami. Like they want to be around great players, and they would take pride in the idea that, Miami can build strong offensive line class and have the number 1 O-line class in the country. So I think, for all the names out there, I mean, for Brett Kolajay, who I think is one of the best interior offensive linemen in the country, there's been rumors about him trending to multiple different spots, but maybe now that he sees, dang, Miami got Cantwell, like maybe that's going to influence my decision. If he's originally from Colorado, but a lot of the teams recruiting him are in the Southeast. So if he wants to be in this area, maybe Miami could sway him for that reason. So yeah, I think that landing Cantwell, like you mentioned, gives Miami a legit opportunity to finish with a top 5 class. Now they're number 8 now in rivals with a lot of time still to go, because I think he's going to attract a lot more talent to the U.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do want to run something by you that, we didn't talk about previously, that I see comments kind of brewing here on the comments list here about, the money. Everybody wants to talk about the money here, because I'm assuming that Jackson Cantwell is going to start probably next season, not obviously, he can't play 2025. He's got a senior year to play in high school in 2026. I'm assuming that. So when that happens, it really kind of causes a domino effect in maybe a bad way. Here's where I'm going with this. It's like, you're a 5-star guy. You come into a program, and if you don't play, you may seek to go elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
If another 5-star guy kind of beats you out. So that's where kind of NIL and the transfer portal are actually working together, so to speak. It seems like they are kind of working in unison, and it comes to a point where, you got to have tough conversations with some of these players who are expecting to play, to really, talk about options, because a player can, 5-stars are expecting to play pretty much right away these days. And if they don't, they're going to, seek another place to play. Do you think that's an issue? I guess as far as the NIL and trying to spreading that money around, and players that are expected to play, that are not playing, who are jumping ship.
It's 1,000% a reality these days. But I as you do, I'm sure. I think that it's a good thing for players that you have the opportunity not to be quote unquote stuck somewhere. That if you're in a situation that's not good for you, you have two opportunities every year. We'll see how long they keep the two transfer portals, because I think eventually they're going to consolidate just to one transfer portal window. But you have two different opportunities to go and find somewhere else to play with no penalty. You don't have to sit out a year anymore, you know. But the way that I look at it, to simplify it, I just want the best players to have an opportunity to play. And, you know, if Jackson Cantwell beats somebody out next year and they're upset, they want to go find somewhere else to play, by all means, right? You got beaten out by the 5-star wonder kid, you know, you're not going to play here, find another place you think you can start. And then the flip side of that would be tough, right? Because we're all so excited about Jackson Cantwell. If he were to get beaten out and maybe look for another place to play, then maybe that's, not that I'm expecting that to happen, because like you, I think he's going to be a first-year starter, but he still has to come in and cement that and prove that. Then, you know, maybe that would be an indictment on, you know, him not being as good as we thought if he wants to go somewhere else. You know, you never know, though, because I know a lot of people are surprised that that Samson Okunlola is still on the team as a former.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention
5-star.
his name, but yeah, that's kind of who I was alluding to there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's crazy how, like, he's still here despite the fact that, you know, he's not, and some of it for him has been injuries have kept him from being able to practice consistently. I'm not going to pretend that it's all on him. There's been some unfortunate circumstances that have worked against him, but, you know, he's still around, you know, and if he's not able to really kind of break in and find a consistent rotational spot this coming season, who knows what the future would hold for him after that. But I just think it's the game nowadays. And it's part of it why I think you can excuse or at least understand why Miami has been so active in the transfer portal the past couple of years, because you want to build as much depth as you possibly can, create as much competition as you possibly can. And you've always got a plan B and C in case someone who you thought was your plan A decides they want to leave because, you know, maybe they get a bigger money offer somewhere else. It's happened before. You know, it allegedly happened with someone who would have been a starting receiver this coming season, you know, took his talent somewhere else. So it's a two-way street. So I guess my hope would be you have enough talent and depth on your roster. The cream is going to rise to the top. The best possible players earn starting jobs. And unfortunately, if you have to lose some people in the process, you know, you can't make an omelet without breaking a couple of eggs. But it's a part of college football.
Yeah,
it's so different, Marcus. And it's not the same. I mean, you think about like Miami's 2001 national championship team. You know, Vince Wilfork was technically a second-string defensive tackle on that team. Frank Gore was like the third-string running back on that team. You know, Willis McGahee wasn't starting that year because Clinton Portis was the starter. McGahee went on the next year to have one of the best single seasons in Miami history. It's like it's very rare to almost impossible these days to be able to have depth and competition like that. So, I mean, I know Miami wants to get as close to that as possible, but with it being so easy to transfer and so easy to get money someplace else, just changed so much these days. But you got to hope you can get your best possible 22 starters on the field no matter what.
It's great to know that Miami has depth at almost every position. So that's something that was an issue in years past. But with the transfer portal and with the way that Miami is recruiting in these past few cycles, depth is not necessarily an issue. Or if it becomes an issue for some reason because of the transfer portal, they can easily kind of bounce back, you know, as we've seen, you know, in this spring window with adding, you know, a couple of defensive backs, even in the winter window as well. So the transfer portal, I think it's a gift and it's a curse. You know, I think it's something that helps your program and it also hurts your program as well. But Miami's done a tremendous job of really maintaining depth on both recruiting and the transfer portal to maintain a level of consistency. Now, that level of consistency as far as the standard is different for most people, but I think what we saw last year should be the standard for the Miami Hurricanes. 10 wins should be like, I hate to say this because, what has Miami done really in the past, recent years? But I think for the common Miami Hurricane fan, I think it is expected that this team wins close to 10 games or more. I considering the talent, considering how Miami recruits, considering how Miami does well in the transfer portal, there really isn't any reason why this team shouldn't be at 9, 10, 11 wins, 12 wins every year. So I think they're on the cusp of that. And I think if they continue to recruit guys like Jackson Cantwell, obviously they'll continue on that path. To kind of wrap things up here, I did want to talk about future players to be added to this 2026 class. I think there's a couple of guys that Miami fans should just be aware of who could be next. Everybody's like, okay, we got Cantwell. Who's next? And a couple of guys that kind of come to mind to me is, for one, Derek Cooper, the local 5-star talent. I think he is trending towards Miami. I said this a while ago, I believe on a podcast with you, that I do think he ends up staying at Miami. And who wouldn't want to run behind a mammoth of an offensive lineman in Jackson Cantwell and everyone else that they'll have on this offensive line? I think that's key for his commitment. A couple of other guys to keep in mind is Ashari Charles. I think it could be trending towards Miami, the defensive end out of Venice. I think Miami's in a really good spot for him. And then Samarian Wingo, I think, is a player that Kevin Beard, Miami wide receivers coach, really likes. I like the kid a lot. I think he's a natural route runner. I think he's got great size. I think he's a Kevin Beard type of guy as far as his work ethic and his personality is concerned. So I think he should definitely be a player that Miami continues to go after. Obviously, they will. He's got an official visit coming up, as well as several other players. You can check that out on CanesCounty.com as well. But Donno, who do you think could be next, or who would you be excited to hear commits to Miami next?
I mean, first name you mentioned, Derek Cooper. That's the guy who would have me doing cartwheels. And it's there's a big, you mentioned one of the tie-ins, a big tie-in for him with Jackson Cantwell. I mean, first and foremost, and I talked about the effect that having a good offensive line has on the rest of your offense, right? How that trickles down to the rest of the unit. And yeah, if you're Derek Cooper, you've seen even the last couple of years how much success Miami running backs have had running to that right side behind CC and behind Inez Cooper. And, I think Jackson Cantwell could end up being the right tackle starter, the heir apparent to CC after CC goes to the NFL. So yeah, running behind that behemoth would be very attractive. And then also the other domino effect is, and I know that there are other schools that have been trying to get Derek Cooper, but if we want to completely simplify it, there's been a lot of Miami versus Georgia with him, right? And so, hey, maybe if Cantwell had picked Georgia, as a lot of people expected he would, that would be more incentive for Cooper to say, okay, you know what? I can run behind that hog in Athens, Georgia. But instead, Cantwell picks Miami, and, Georgia, I'm not going to, I can't trash their program because they're one of the gold standards in all of college football, but just bear with me here. They did not have success last year running the football. We'll see how they bounce back this year. But last season, 102nd in America in rushing. Miami was 31st in rushing, despite having a very pass-heavy offense with Cam Ward. 6th in yards per carry, 31st in rushing. So, running backs are able to create a lot behind this Miami offensive line. And I think that can even get better in a couple of years with Jackson Cantwell to run behind. So I think that's got to be part of Derek Cooper's decision as well. And of course, Miami, South Florida is home for him. I feel like he's, certainly has the ear of his mother, who really wants him to stay home. So hopefully mom can give us an assist on this one. But yeah, I mean, every name you mentioned would excite me. But to me, the top of that list is Derek Cooper. And by the way, Cooper is a stud running back. He also plays defense. So would they allow him to be maybe a two-way guy playing some safety and running back? We will find out, but he's certainly capable of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Love Derek Cooper. Great kid. Runs upright, explosive, tough to bring down. Catches the football well. He's kind of like Jordan Lyle 2.0. I expect a big season from Jordan Lyle, but he's the same type of back where he can basically do anything that you really need to do from the backfield. So really excited. I will be really excited if he eventually chooses the U, as well as the other names I mentioned. A couple of other names that I would be super excited for would be Bryce Perry Wright, defensive lineman out of Georgia. I'd be super excited if I heard his name. And under the radar wide receiver, I think, is Jace Matthews as well. I think he's a player that Miami has some momentum with, so I think that could be a possibility as well for Miami. So look out for possibly some news brewing with those guys, as well as more news from CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals.com network. Alex Donno joined me today for the Storm Tracker podcast. I really appreciate you joining me today, and hopefully we can link up again and talk a little bit more Miami Hurricanes football.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me as always, and it's great to see everybody in the live chat and Miami fans, rightfully so, still jacked up about Jackson Cantwell. Let's enjoy it.
Absolutely should be a ripple effect. Like I said, that's going to wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel live from Canes County, and also subscribe to the website, CanesCounty.com, for free. Use the promo code Miami30. Until the next episode.